everybody, JP here. By now, the Load Super Deluxe box set is available in stores, and I thought that was a pretty opportune time to do a little deep dive onto some of the guitar tones throughout that album. Now, like many of you, and I'm sure I'm gonna get all the comments of, I stopped listening to them, yada yada, I get it. I totally get it. But, Load, it shocked me as much as anyone else when it came out. Not what I was expecting at all, especially with Until It Sleeps being the lead single, because this was the days before leaks. You really had no idea what you were getting until like at least the first single came out, and then, about a month later, usually the album came out. I remember like a year before, Metallica played some shows in London or in Europe in 95. And you'd read the reviews and hear that they played, I think Devil's Dance and what was the other one? 2x4. Those were the ones that they debuted live. You couldn't hear them though. You just had to go by the reviewer's description of them. And that was really all you had. Yeah, that album, bit shocking. I do think like King Nothing, if that had been the first single, I think more older fans might have been more receptive to it, but it took a lot of balls to put out Until It Sleeps, complete with eye makeup and everything. But, hey, they did something right, I guess, I really do believe that about half of Load and half of Reload together make like one solid killer album. In fact, I have a little playlist that I put together a while back, and I made sure to keep it under the 74-minute cutoff for CDs back then. So it kind of shows my favorites from both of those albums together. So I'll link that in the description if anybody wants to check it out. I call it Unloaded because I unloaded all the stuff I didn't like. Anyhow, this was a time of experimentation for Metallica. There's ear candy all over the place, whereas the Black Album was a singularly unique production style where, the guitars, the snare drum, the reverb, everything, from start to finish, when you hear it, you know that you're listening to the Black Album, right? Whereas Load, they kind of went for like a more, let's say conventional, because it was experimental for them, but it was kind of the more conventional things that bands had been doing in studios for, the past 20, 30 years at that point or so. So in terms of guitar tones, James was still using the Mesa Mark II C+ head that, he had used on the previous albums. Biggest difference is that he stopped using the additional parametric EQ in the effects loop of it. Even though he was still cutting mids on the amp itself, it had more mid-range because it wasn't getting that extra set of, scooped EQ curves following it. Then at some point during the recording of the album, James started playing around with the Mesa Triaxis preamps. In fact, he had 4 of them in his rig at this point in time. 2 of them, a main and a backup, to replicate the Mark II C+, so that he didn't have to take those heads on the road anymore. So yeah, we're gonna start out with the Kali Axis plugin to play around with that. Let's hear that by itself. Now, James' parts are on the left, and Kirk's rhythms are on the right of this album. And that was also a first for Metallica, with Kirk playing rhythm guitar. So we will get to his tones later on. We're gonna start off with James. So as you can see, these are documented settings. His settings did vary a bit, but this is one set of them, and they worked quite well here. So as you can see, we're still using a lot of treble and a lot of bass and no mids. Now I do have the dynamic voice turned up to 10. He did not use the dynamic voice. He had a custom Mesa Boogie 5-band graphic EQ rack mounted in his rig. It actually was 2 of them, one for the main Triaxis, one for the backup Triaxis. But I really like the dynamic voice. Yeah, sounds really nice. And for all of these, I'm using the Cab Sim with Mesa Boogie Rectifier V30 cabinet. And leaning a little heavier on the 421 than the 57, but just kind of tweak them until they sounded the best. And all the guitar tracks are going through a UAD Neve 1081. It's set flat. I'm not boosting or cutting anything. Just getting a little bit of color from it. And then they're also going into an SSL-E version 2. Same thing, no booster cuts, just whatever color that this particular plugin is imparting. And my reasoning for that is that Bob Rock and Randy Staub favored Neve 1081s for tracking, And we know they used them on the Black Album because 1-on-1 Studios had a rack of 24 that they used for pretty much everything. And they recorded this at the plant in Sausalito. And if you look at some of the notes, the studio notes are available if you do a search, and you'll see Neve 1081 markings. Again, I didn't really get into any drastic EQing with them. I just wanted to get whatever color that they might impart on the sounds. And I've got them going through all the guitar tracks here. So another part of James' sound that was new for the Load era was the Mesa Boogie triple rectifier. He had a triple rectifier head in the studio. And for that, we are using the Brainworx single rectifier plugin, which is free, the Mega Single. So go download it if you don't have it. It's pretty convincing. And when you combine it with without it, with it. And these are, again, confirmed settings from James' rectifier usage. Now, I also tried to replicate this with the Triaxis. I personally thought the Brainworx sounded a little more realistic here. But we also don't know exactly which Triaxis the Triaxis is based on. There were two versions, and one of the differences was the rectifier mode. That's the lead one red mode. So in a pinch, I think you could get away with the Triaxis, but I personally think the Brainworx sounds a little more rectifier realistic. And then another amp that made a return to the scene was Bob Rock's Jose Arredondo modded Marshall. On the Black Album, it was used as the thickener track in the middle, but my understanding, it was part of the blend of James's amps on most of his rhythm tracks here. So for that, I'm again using the JMP1 by Nembrini, and I'm really not using much of it in James' sound here, but you'll hear. See, without it, there's a little something missing. I feel like it's really noticeable on that little riff there. One thing that I should also note is when blending the Brainworx track with the Nembrini tracks, see, the Nembrini tracks have no phase issues together. But for some reason, there is a little bit of a phase issue with the Brainworx track when I bypass this little labs in between phase. Hear that? It's pretty drastic. So just doing this little bit of phase adjustment with this wonderful plugin that I can't believe I lived without for so long really makes that usable. The Brainworx wouldn't be usable without this, frankly. Because look at the phase we're doing. I mean, we're doing, that's about 45 degrees right there. So yeah, that was crucial. And now just for fun, combine that with the stem of James' original. That's what we want. So So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Without having James' actual guitar and James' hands and James' playing ability, I'd say we got pretty darn close there, and I'm quite happy with that. So now let's talk about some Kirk Hammett guitar parts. Now, Kirk's tone is a little different, likely a lot because of the way he plays. Also, I know, at least live, he was just using a rectifier at this point in time. So that's, again, the Brainworx Mega Single. And these are Kirk's known settings from his rack mount rectifiers in his live rig. I'm using the same IR that I used for James's rectifier. I just kind of scrolled through till I found the one that sounded best. Didn't really put a ton of thought into that. It's just one of the stock ones that comes with the plugin. And then blending a little bit of Marshall in, again with the JMP one. So, story is that when Metallica was touring in Australia towards the end of the Black Album touring cycle, Kirk found a Marshall JMP head from the late 70s. I think it was a 2203 model head, I'm not sure exactly. And he loved it. It's the one that has the 240 volt sticker right on the front of it. He's been using that ever since then. I mean, I know he used it on the most recent album. There was pictures of him with it in Metallica HQ. So that's been like his favorite Marshall since he bought it at that time. And actually, he did have a Marshall JMP1 preamp in his rack beginning on the Load tour as well. I'm not sure. I had heard he only used that for leads and clean tones live. But if you compare our tones here with... That's his stem from the album. It needs that Marshall, you know? Marshall just gives it a little something in the upper mid-range. So yeah, I thought that was important to include here. Then, of course, we've got all the guitars going into an instance of Sound City Room. You know how much I love that. A little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression. That's without it. You can hear how it really fills things in. And then I'm doing the cross delays with the AMS delay, the Bob Rock cross delay, which is just 80 millisecond, 90 millisecond, no modulation, just enough regen to give it a little bit of density, and then the guitars on the left go into the right of the delay, and the guitars on the right go into the left. So that's without, let me, that's without anything. That's with the room. And now with the cross delays. You could hear James' delay on the right there. And that's the Sound City Room. It's probably the best way to observe this in context. You know, cool stuff. So now I've got all the guitars going down to a stereo guitar bus with a little bit of Studer 800, which I'm really digging. This is a new one for me, and I'm just getting the hang of. It's like a more elaborate version of the Oxide. I still like the Oxide, but you could do even more with the Studer, which is pretty cool. And then another instance of the SSL-E channel, again, just for color. I'm bypassing everything and I'm just getting whatever color comes through it. I've got a little bit of bus compression, more for the sound of the box than anything else. But then I've got something new. Let's talk about this for a second. This is the Mixwave Electrodyne 511 EQ. And I'm loving this. I'm just doing a dB, or actually 0.99 of 10K shelf. This is a shelf or bell button there. And I'm doing 100 hertz on the bottom, 1 dB. And I just love what it does overall to the sound. I'll do a little A/B for you here. Without it. That's width. So in addition to the EQ, it gives some color to the mid-range. So, really digging that. Again, there's so much ear candy on this album. I may get into some of the more experimental bits and pieces here and there. They did a lot of Roland VG8 guitar synth stuff. I don't even know how to go about trying to replicate that. I know they ran that through a matchless Spitfire that was feeding a rotating speaker, an old Maestro Rover rotating speaker, which I wasn't even aware of. I'd never heard of that, actually, until I started researching the Load guitars. But yeah, really cool stuff all around. Of course, the Phase 100 that you hear on Bleeding Me. And yeah, a lot of cool sounds. Definitely talk more about the Load guitars. But for now, man, I hope you guys dug this. I really enjoyed making it, as always. And I can't wait to hear all of your thoughts about Load. Whether you liked the video or not, tell me what you thought about Load when it came out. If you were around then, if you were a fan before then, I'm up for the debate, that's for sure. And I definitely have some strong feelings about certain songs as well. All right, so please like, comment, subscribe, and of course I'll be back with more soon. All right, take care, guys. Later.